lighting people, it's been over 6 years and 300 episodes since two members of NAIL, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, decided to collaborate on what has become the longest running and most popular podcast focused on the subject of commercial and industrial lighting. We thought it would be a good idea to catch up with the host, Michael Colligan, and co-host, Greg Ehrich, of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast to learn more about its journey, its mission, and the people behind it. Michael, Greg, so glad you're both here. Michael, let's start with you. You're the more outspoken one, the provocateur, the contrarian, some might even say an instigator. What motivates you to question so many industry norms?
What motivates me to question so many industry norms? I'm not sure they're norms. I think they're assumptions. And I think that people are operating on failed axiomatic presuppositions on a lot of issues. And so when I'm questioning them, I'm questioning assumptions, not norms. And those assumptions need to be questioned.
What are a couple examples that come to mind as ones that are maybe some wider assumptions that lighting people make that maybe should be questioned more often than it is by most lighting people?
Well, the first assumption I would question is that darkness is not is not something we provide. We should be providing darkness as well as lighting. And so that's the most glaring and obvious assumption that the lighting industry operates. We're morally responsible for the restoration of darkness and the preservation of night, sorry.
And you know what, interestingly, the two of you with your involvement with NAILed, your businesses are your lighting distributors. You're in the business of selling light and monetizing responsible lighting, but that doesn't, like you just said, it doesn't always mean throwing lumens wherever they can go. It's being responsible about it. Greg, let's shift to you from a podcast perspective. There's so many different ways that we can, gauge the success of a podcast. There's stats and monetization and just good feelings you get when you walk trade shows and you're recognized. What do you and Michael, are you specifically used to gauge the success of the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast?
It's difficult to, there are a lot of different avenues you can get statistics from, but to compile them all and really figure it out takes a lot of time and it's not always accurate. So what I really gauge it on is doing that is the trade shows, like a regional trade show to the large trade show, whatever it might be, or somebody coming into my office at Premier Lighting here to talk about their product. They give me a double take and they look and say, how do I know you? And I usually don't go right to it, but I give it a little time and then I throw out some ideas and I say, maybe the podcast. I go, that's it, the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. I love it. Or, whatever. I remember this episode, and they go into it. So to me, that's really the true gauge of successfulness, is that people are actually listening to it and remembering it and learning from it.
And Greg, just to follow up on that, do you tend to get more like fan mail or constructive criticism / hate mail at the Get a Grip pod?
Actually, anything that ever gets sent in would probably be more on the hate side, but verbally in person is always on the positive side.
And which one of the two of you is usually the target of that hate mail?
You could probably guess that, but I'll say it out loud. It's usually Michael. It's some statement he might have made, and that's part of the deal.
Fair enough. And Michael, let's go back to you. And there's, when you think about your favorite podcast episodes, and you've done over 300 of them, but what separates the ones that are your favorite ones? And I'll let you determine what favorite means. What separates those from the ones that didn't make that top tier in your mind?
We have something Greg and I talk about is called the edge. And the edge is where, you're recording a conversation and somebody is being challenged and we're pushing them a little bit and they're uncomfortable and they don't like the line of questioning. And then we bring them back from the edge. And that happens, every now and then, every 10 episodes or so, we'll have that situation where somehow before the conversation is going to deteriorate into an argument, we find our minds meet and we come together. And those moments are so special. They're so beautiful. And I've been honored to have those situations happen over and over and over again. Again, not on every episode, but many times, Greg's sitting there. It's so awkward. I can see him squirming in his chair. And then we find a place where we come together and we can agree upon something. And then it all comes back. And those things are very special to me because that's where knowledge is forged, where understanding is created in those moments where you're taking someone as far as they can go. A couple times we went over, A couple times we went over the edge, and we couldn't release those podcasts, you know. But that's what we're striving for. We're striving to take things to the furthest level of someone's understanding or their grip on the industry, and then challenge it a little bit. So those are special.
That's interesting, and you've certainly honed your interviewing skills over the years to where you're able
Thank
to
you.
kind of gauge that. But when you listen, when you go back to your youth or early adulthood, when you're listening to radio or now podcasts, who are some of those interviewers, Michael, that you think are best at doing that, pushing guests to the edge without tipping over it?
You know, most of the people I see are the opposites of what Greg and I do. So, you know, we're dealing in subject matter expertise. So, for example, if you take Rogan, he does the opposite. What he does is he breaks a conversation down, a complicated conversation down into understandable chunks and then delivers it to the masses, right? Whereas what we're doing is we're elevating the conversation and pushing people to places they're not maybe as comfortable with or some things they don't want to talk about. And so that's a little bit different. I honestly, I believe that Greg and I invented this, and it's, you know, I absolutely need Greg, and Greg absolutely needs me to be able to do this. There's something about the combination which is very powerful. So I don't know. You know, I'm not so good with names, but he passed away recently. The guy with the really thick glasses was good. Charlie Rose is another one. Charlie Rose actually was very good at this. I know that his career ended in scandal, and I'm not sure why, but yeah, Charlie Rose was an excellent interviewer. And the other guy, King, what's his first name?
Larry King. Larry King.
Larry King.
Yeah.
Larry King could do this too. Another one that is actually a fantastic interviewer when he's serious is Howard Stern. When he's serious, not when he's being an idiot, but when he takes a serious track on things, he can be an excellent interviewer as well.
I think people who are like in the radio craft or that interview broadcast journalism space, they do put Stern on that Mount Rushmore of top interviewers. If you can, you know, kind of look the other way on some of the content, if you're offended by it, but it's certainly his craft of being able to interview people and I guess push them to the edge the way you described earlier is part of it. So this is a short form discussion, not your typical 30+ minute get a grip pod. So I have a bunch more questions, guys, both to you as distributors as well as podcast guys. So I thought maybe we could just interject a quick speed round, short answers, and I'll rattle off a bunch of questions. Are you down for this?
Sure.
Let's do it.
All right, let's go for this. Raphael, start the clock. Michael, let's start. Oh, no, Greg, we're going to start with you. All right, we'll do that again. All right. Raphael, now start the clock. Greg, the one fixture you frequently recommend against, but customers keep asking for it is?
Flat panel.
Michael, what is the one product you have too much inventory of and can't unload?
F96T12 Cool White. Yes.
That's very specific. Greg, how long has it been since the last time Michael said something on air that made you cringe?
When did we last record? Yesterday.
Michael, without impacting your income, if you had to choose one career and only one career for the rest of your life, which would it be? Distributor guy or podcaster?
Both. I can't have one without the other now.
Choose one, Michael. Choose one.
I'd say distributor.
Greg, same question. Distributor guy or podcaster?
I'm in the distributor mode. The reason we did the podcast was to become better distributors, but it's morphed into a lot more than that. So
You
distributor.
guys are true lighting guys. I love it. Michael, was there a runner-up podcast name to get a grip on lighting? If so, what was it?
The Lighting Specialist Podcast.
The Lighting Specialist Podcast. Greg, who would you rather interview, a popular lighting business executive or a popular lighting scientist?
Lighting business executive.
Michael, the lighting person you'd most like to interview but haven't is?
Joe Biden.
The lighting person you'd most like to interview but haven't?
I want to talk to the President of the United States about lighting, but yes, okay. We've interviewed a lot. Who's out there? Whew. I can't think of a lighting person off the top of my head. No.
Interesting. That's a
Neil
that's good
Ash.
news.
Neil Ash would be nice. Yeah.
Agreed. The CEO of Acuity Brands, who joined 3 years ago. Greg, the lighting topic that pushes Michael's buttons the most is?
Exterior lighting.
Michael, what good feeling feels better? Complimentary podcast fan mail or a big order for your lighting business?
Big order for the lighting business.
All right, another lighting guy answer, and that ends our speed round. Yeah, that always feels good, those big orders, especially if you put a lot of weeks and months into those. So, well, thanks for doing the speed round, guys. And I guess, Greg, we'll wrap up this discussion with you. Nailed, of course, is what brought you guys together, and it's kind of the business, or the organization, I should say, behind the podcast. For those who aren't familiar with Nailed, what is Nailed, and what influence do they have on your content and your day-to-day operations at the podcast?
Well, it's the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. So it's a group of lighting distributors like ourselves, Mike and myself, and another 80 around the country or so. And what it really is collaborative discussions, and that's how the podcast became what it is from Nailed discussions. Mike and I have been doing this since 2009, maybe, when we met, and we've had these discussions. Now we just said, all right, 2017, let's start recording these discussions, and it all came from Nailed.
Fantastic. And Michael, if people wanted to learn more about the Get a Grip On pod, or to download or subscribe, how would they do that, Michael?
Got to go to getagriponlighting.com. You can check us out there. It's not the fanciest website, but everything's up there. All our stuff, everything we've worked on. We're kind of lazy on the website side, but you can check it out there. We're on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And I'd also encourage people to visit restoringdarkness.com, which is some other work that we're working on as well.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I enjoyed the conversation. So yes, go to getagriponlighting.com. That's GetAGriponlighting.com, and check it out there. That's a lot to spell. I apologize. But anyway, guys, that's a tip of the cap to you, and I appreciate what you guys doing. It's always a great conversation. I really enjoy the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. I've enjoyed my time on there, but I enjoyed even more when I'm listening and learning, and being entertained occasionally as well by all the topics that you folks cover. So really a tip of the hat to you. And thank you for joining us today, Greg, for 5 big questions.
Thank you.
And Michael, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you all the people out there in the lighting world. We love you guys.
Hey there, we really enjoyed that discussion. We hope that you did as well. Be sure to click that big LED logo next to me, and what that'll do is subscribe you to our YouTube channel so you don't miss the next 5 Big Questions interview. And YouTube subscribers always receive an early preview to the next interview before we even post it on the Inside Lighting website. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.